Hi, Bradley. How you doing? All right. So I want to take a look at now. I was reading your writing here, and this kind of brings me to a very pertinent point. And I think you've actually caught on to this. Many students have. Okay, and I've got a few emails regarding the instructions and something that may not make complete sense. So we take a look at the instructions here. It says begin, draw a baseline, mean line, and a camp line on the marker paper. All right. At that point, you should have said, and after reading the course materials, if you read that, at that point, you should have said to yourself, wait a second, that doesn't make sense. How can I draw the mean line and the cap line without having the letters in place? And you're exactly right. The reason is because mean line, cap line are all dependent on the individual typeface. So you can't just draw a universal baseline, mean line, and cap line because the mean line is associated with the specific size of these lowercase letters in any given typeface, and the cap line again is associated with the uppercase letters of any given typeface. Okay, so those are not constant; those are not universal values. Those fluctuate based on the typeface. So noticing issues with the baseline, mean line, cap line is definitely a pertinent point. So thank you for bringing that up. I'll talk about moving this into your final presentation in 1 second. But at this point, I would say you're looking good. Your letter forms all look good. I think that mechanically you've done a very good job tracing. There's a couple of things I think that could be established to a little bit of a greater degree. And I think the one and main thing is the size of the letters. It's just no surprise here that your letters start big and get small as we move from left to right. Okay, so it's very clear that this A is much larger than this A. And I think the reason for that is the fact that your baseline, your mean line and your cap line are all starting high and moving down. So these are not perfectly parallel with the baseline. You definitely want to make sure that cap line and that mean line are perfectly parallel with the baseline, so that you can use it for spacing and to for a guide to establish consistent size in the letter forms. So what I would recommend moving into final presentation is this. First, draw your baseline. All right. If you have a T-square, that's great. Just make sure that baseline is straight and level. All right. Then take your paper and take the printout and trace the cap B. Place the B on the baseline. Trace the cap B. Get your markers. You don't have to draw the whole thing out right now. Just get your cap line set. Once you get your cap line in place, make sure that is parallel. All right. Make sure that it runs perfectly parallel with the baseline. Can't fluctuate at all. In other words, this cannot be at an angle. It has got to be perfectly parallel with the baseline. At that point, do the same thing with one of the lowercase letters, preferably the first lowercase a. Trace over it, find out where that A sits on the baseline, get up there and get your mean line measurement. All right, once you have that measurement, go ahead and draw that mean line out. Make sure that, again, it's very important that that mean line is perfectly level and perfectly parallel with the cap line, and yes, you guessed it, with the baseline. Those can't fluctuate. Those have to be perfectly level. All three lines, baseline, mean line, cap line, should be perfectly parallel with one another. Once you have the mean line and the cap line in place, it's just a matter of starting to look at the distance between letters and where you're going to place them before you start tracing them out. And the rule of thumb there is this, and I'm sure you've seen this, I've mentioned this several times in this critique board, but generally you want the tightest kerning, or the narrowest space between letter forms, between two curved letter forms. That is the B and the A. So that should be closest. The next widest should be between, and this is a general rule of thumb in kerning in general, specifically with sans serif typefaces, is two curved letter forms should be kerned closest. The next widest space should be between letter forms, that one that is straight and one that is curved. And the widest space between letter forms should be between letters that are straight. So in this particular case, the narrowest distance would be between the B and the A. The next narrowest distance would be between the N and the A. And the widest distance would be between the A and the N. Okay, so those are my recommendations moving forward. Otherwise, I think the craft is good. Your attention to detail. You want to pay attention when you're sketching these out. Pay attention to a couple of things. Okay, variable widths width stroke is a pretty major characteristic in the Franklin Gothic book typeface. So in other words, when I say variable width stroke, I'm talking about this area right here. You can see this stroke right here is much thinner than this stroke right there. So definitely want to show that in your sketches. It also looks to like the open counter area. This area right here is a little larger than what you have depicted here. It seems like that space right there is a little too close as compared to the actual letter face. Typeface. Watch your vertical lines. Your vertical should be true verticals. Right now, that is, it's a little bit on a diagonal from right to left, top to bottom. So that's definitely got to be a true vertical. Watch all your verticals as well. Not all areas of letter forms are true verticals. For example, the right side of the stem of this A, right down to this leg, seems to be a little bit curved, right? We can see a little taper right there. But the B, the stem of the B, is definitely a true vertical. So you want to represent that in your renderings. Okay, so those are really my only recommendations. As I said, I think you did a really good job. This would probably be perfect if you had a good mean line in place so that you really establish a good consistency in size in the letter form. So it's really important moving into your final submission for this week that you get that baseline, mean line, and cap line. So technically and theoretically, you did learn here that this is not a true mean line. A mean line is a line that runs across the tops of the lowercase letters, okay? So again, that's why it's a little misleading to draw the baseline, mean line, and cap line first. The mean line can't get drawn until one of the lowercase letters is used to measure the height of that mean line. And by reference, by review, I should say, that distance is called what? The distance between the baseline and the mean line is called the x height. Yes. Okay, so if these terms are not familiar, I would recommend go back and review some of the course materials for week 1. But I think that most of that terminology should be familiar to you. Okay, all right, great job. So that is what I would be looking for in your final submission. So if you have any questions at all, please feel free to let me know. I'll be glad to address. Other than that, we'll go ahead and take a look at this when you submit it. All right, good job. Thank you very much.